Britain had this idea to make many small machines and help their lives out in manufacturing. America adopted this idea, but instead of making small machines, they made this really big one. This led to the idea of Coke. Although there was a flaw in this by having many job loss and share Coke.
Oh, okay. An English clergyman named Joseph Priestley developed an interest in carbonation. He developed an experiment on fermentation vats that made him become more interested in the mass of air and gas. He discovered that if you put carbonation into water, that creates soda water.
Hey look! It's the original Coke. John Pemberton, founder of Coca-Cola, was at first a pharmacist. Legend has it he originally was trying to find a cure for headaches, but however, he ended up making Coca-Cola. Although that is a myth, the original story is when John Pemberton was actually trying to make a beverage and ended up adding exotic ingredients to create Coke. That's it.
So, when word got out that there was a new beverage named Coca-Cola, everybody wanted it. So they started transporting it. The only way to do this was by horse or by sea train. However, after time, when Coca-Cola was held in this glass bottle, it just went bad and this was making people sick. So they had no other way to do it. However, they then started to think, maybe instead of just distributing the Coke itself, they distribute the syrup to places that already have soda water. In doing this, they began to just distribute syrup itself, in which people would mix into their own soda water to make Coca-Cola.
Due to the fact that this drink started off as an alcoholic beverage, John Pemberton, the creator, had to reinvent it. He had to reinvent it because there was a new law that was passed that did not allow people to drink alcohol. When reinventing it, he had to take into consideration that the drink had the correct amount of Coke, Cola, and soda water flavoring in it. John Pemberton realized that it wasn't such a big hit at first. However, they sold it to local pharmacies, and he had his nephew personally go ask people what they thought of the drink. And surprisingly, people liked it, and more people became attracted to the drink. And at one point, an employee named Frank Robinson brought up the name Coca-Cola to name this new brand, and John Pemberton went with it. So that is how we have Coca-Cola today. With the release of work Impregnating Water with Fixed Air by Joseph Priestley in 1772, the idea of carbonated water or soda water was introduced to the public and still continues to be used today. However, this idea was modified or changed over time to have different functions. At first, this soda water was developed by Thomas Henry, a Manchester apothecary and chemist, to be having medicinal purposes, with specialization in putrid fevers, dysentery, which was an infection of the intestine, and vomiting, and more.
In the late 1820s, a Philadelphian named Joseph Hawkins created a fountain to dispense soda water. Due to the high popular demand of soda water, he was able to show the change of medicine to an actual beverage.
Now, stepping away from Coke, let's talk about the author Tom Standage. He's the chief editor of a newspaper called The Economist. And because of this, he knows about news and how different things affect the world. Like, for example, common things that are going on today, like gun control in America, or different things happening in world news. Being that he knows how different events change the world, it could have helped him write the book by knowing how the introduction of Coca-Cola could have affected the United States economy.
According to Brandon Bosworth in an article titled Literant, he believes that Standage leaves out important aspects of history when writing a history of the world in 6 classes. He believes that, for example, in the Coca-Cola chapter, he could have included contemporaneous competitors such as Moxie when writing this chapter.
In this chapter, one of the interesting quotes that I found was one that states, "The Coca-Cola Company is the biggest single supplier of such drinks. Globally, the company supplies 3% of humanity's intake." During the early 1900s, the human population was at 1.6 billion, and 3% of that population is 48 million, and I found that to be a very large number. Even though our population has grown very large today, I still think that's very impressive, and I know that number has only grown for the company Coca-Cola. The second interesting quote that I selected was one that states, Coca-Cola was genuinely welcomed by military men in far-flung military bases. It made them feel safe and gave them a sense of morale. Morale in this quote means self-confidence or confidence, which is what they needed in order to go into battle. I found this very interesting because based on this quote, it makes it seem as Coca-Cola is somewhat a comfort drink. It made them feel safe. It made them feel less stressed when having to go into battle. And I found it very interesting how a drink that an everyday person could be drinking makes a person that's halfway across the world feel so safe and so comforted by this drink.